What is up, community?
How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Yeah.
Are you community today?
I am a part of your community.
Yes, you
We're
are.
communitying together.
Yes. We have been having a lot of fun talking about leadership the last couple of weeks. There's obviously so many aspects to that, but to talk on Sunday specifically about teams.
Right.
And, you said earlier today, we were talking about, I was designed to do team. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I love doing team. I talked on Sunday about playing high school sports, and I enjoyed my team sports much more than individual.
Right.
Even when I stepped out of ministry for a time and into law enforcement, one of the reasons, that was appealing to me because there was a number of people in law enforcement that had been a part of the church I had worked at, and they would talk about the teams that they would work in. I got to work in some great teams and with some great people. I love that environment, and again, you and I love baseball.
Yeah.
So
good teams are always better than bad teams. Yeah. We know how that works.
Well, it was interesting because one of the principles we talked about on Sunday is teamwork. You have to have talented people, but you want people that know how to do teamwork, right? If you just have talent and they can't do team, it often doesn't work. And I think back to our favorite teams, like our favorite team, the Giants, as baseball fans, like when we look back to their world championships a little over a decade ago, like a lot of those players were in-house. They weren't big names. They were this scrappy team. And it made it kind of fun to be a fan of even.
Right.
Yeah.
Not many MVPs, a few all-stars in there, but nothing extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right.
You didn't have, the big name players, right? Or the big, all-stars that were brought over for big money, whatever.
Right.
So anyway, team is just a great piece of life to do team together. So much of what we do in the church is in teams. And so we have a number of teams at the church. This is a way for people to connect, to belong, to have purpose, particularly as they come to faith. So
contribute.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. One of our key words. So we're always encouraging people, if you're part of a team, we want you to see people, see an opportunity to invite people onto those teams.
Yeah, the best recruiter to a team is someone who's already on the team. Yeah. Even more so than the team leader or the pastor or the staff person that's leading that team. The people on that team say, hey, we have a blast doing this and you would be a great fit. I'd love to do this ministry with you and invite people in.
Yeah. It gives people a sense of purpose. I think most people want to be part of a team, right? A sense of we're doing something larger than ourselves. We get to connect with others. We get to use our giftedness in a unique way. And so we have teams that serve on Sunday morning. And then another aspect of team is our community groups.
Yep.
Like this idea we're teaming in life together.
Right.
And I think sometimes we don't think of that as a team, but it really is, because as we do the spiritual life, as we look to grow in faith, those are the people around us that are probably asking us the most significant questions, or that we're probably praying with or sharing that part of life with.
Yeah, I think it's important that you look at your life as something that you need a team around you. It's not just that you're trying to accomplish something, it's that you're trying to live life a certain way. And so a community group plays a big part in that, and especially in your encouragement or your spiritual growth or even your personal growth, is to have people around you that are praying for you, challenging you. Challenging you is a big one. When you invite people in to say, hey, what do you see in me that I need to do better or different? If you invite somebody into that you trust and is going to give you wisdom, then you're off to a place where you can really excel, I think.
I think that the community group, looking at it as a team and that aspect, like, unless you get into a team, sometimes you don't know really some of your giftedness, your strengths, what you have to contribute. I think it's so often in the team of a community group where that gets called out, because someone will look at you and say, man, you're great with people, or you communicate God's truth in really simple ways. Absolutely. Or I hear in your heart a love for kids and investing in kids. And people begin to call that out in each other.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what happened to you and I when we were young, right? Somebody said, I see in you, even at, a knucklehead junior high or knucklehead high schooler, I see in you a leader. I had that youth pastor we talked about last week told me, I think you could be a Greek scholar. He didn't know my grandfather was a Greek scholar. So when he spoke that into my life, it made my heart jump up, and so that's a really important piece of being in community with each other, is letting people know what you see in them and how you see Christ using them. And when we're talking about team, we're not talking about reaching for our own goals at church. You might reach some personal goals at church, but we're talking about growing God's kingdom and being on mission there. And so there's something that's, I feel, more exciting about being on team at church than versus maybe the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of you get to do that in both environments.
Absolutely.
You're building team in the workplace too. I mean, obviously, we specifically know church a little bit, but so within a community group, we typically have a leader, someone who's facilitating the conversation. But we have people who host.
Yep.
We have people who sometimes take care of the prayer needs in that. But we also have something where we call the Apprentice Leader, which we probably don't talk about enough, because if we're going to build teams, going back to the last point on Sunday of Jesus inspiring and equipping, then us as leaders, then within our team environments of the church, we've got to build up leaders. And so talk a little bit about like kind of that apprenticeship model. We talked a little bit last week about mentorship, but I think it's something we need to focus on more. And we need you to know as a church, we're wanting to have people move into leadership, grow in leaderships, learn how to delegate to others, build teams themselves.
Yeah. So we call it, or we've been taught, it's the 2-2-2 principle, right? Yeah. So 2 Timothy 2:2.
In fact, I have it. Let me just read it.
You pull that up. So basically what's going on is, did you pull it up?
Yeah, I got it.
That was fast.
So Paul writes to Timothy. We were talking about this earlier. And this was Paul's instructions to Timothy, was a man he had trained up. He says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others."
Right.
So it's interesting as we have this idea. So Paul built this team. Timothy's part of it.
Right.
But then he says, "Hey, I've equipped you. You've seen me do something. I've taught you. Now, so I've taken it and given it to Timothy. Now, Timothy, I want you to give it to other people, invite them onto the team, train them up, equip them, and make sure it's people who also have a chance then to take it to the next group of people."
Right.
So we're looking 4 generations. Paul is talking about himself to Timothy, to qualified leaders who will then take it to others.
Yeah.
And the church, we need to be doing that.
We have to be doing that because we're building an eternal kingdom. So it's going to go beyond Will and I. And we're standing on the shoulders of men and women who went before us, right?
Absolutely.
So we totally understand that, and we want to live that way, and we want to have people that are following us. So how this works in a small group setting, in a community group setting, is we want leaders to have an apprentice, or even in children's ministry or in our welcome team, we want people shadowing one another so that the next generation of leaders is coming up. And so in a small group setting, you would have an apprentice, and that means that the leader would just be investing in them, giving them an opportunity to watch them lead a small group, giving them maybe some instruction or correction. And then eventually, as your group grows or over time, you'll end up with 2 leaders there instead of 1. And then those 2 leaders would go start 2 groups.
You have a chance to multiply.
Right.
There's the idea, right, in the church, is that people continually be invited in. The teams grow, right? Sometimes we sacrifice, like, man, it's great that you and I get to be in a group on Wednesday night, but we're in a place where Justin needs to take another 7 or 8 people and start a new group because he's a leader now, and I take another 7 or 8 people and start a group because we want to see people, invited into the kingdom.
Yeah. Again, it's about growing God's kingdom, not our own. And so it does. Sometimes doing the apprenticeship model means that we sacrifice a little bit of relationship for more relationship.
Yeah.
So when you have an apprentice or an intern or someone that you're doing life with and you're raising up, eventually, more often than not, you're going to hug it out and say, it's time for you to go. Yeah. It's time for you to go lead or go start a group. And those can be hard transitions, but that's what happens when you do it right. You should be sad when you push an intern out of the nest to go do ministry on their own, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I talked about on Sunday when we were talking about teams and being leaders, we want to be open-handed leaders. it means that you have to be willing to give to those people,
Right.
train them up, teach them the things you know, right? You have to be willing to speak into their giftedness. It takes time. And then you got to be able to release them
Right.
for the benefit of the kingdom or the benefit of your organization or
Right.
your work environment, right? You want to build them up.
Yeah.
And again, too many of us hold on tight because we want to make the decisions in the workplace, or we want to have control, or we want to have credit even within the church. That happens so often. And we want to be open-handed leaders.
Yeah, almost every intern I've said goodbye to has been really painful and scary for me. Like, man, I really worked well with that intern. Am I going to find another intern like I had there? Or am I going to have another assistant that gets me the way that they did?
Yeah.
And that can be very scary, but God's always provided. Maybe not the exact type of giftedness, but another unique opportunity for relationship and then growth for our organization and for me as a leader too.
Yeah. I think one last thing, as we talk about team, some of you are like, man, I don't have a team around me.
Right.
And I said earlier, as a church, we always want to be inviting people in to serve on a team as an usher, to be a part of a community group, invite people in, and then we want to equip and train up new leaders in that. But for you personally, you also have to be proactive. You have to begin to be intentional about the people you put around you. So again, if you're a young mom, and sometimes that can be very isolating, or a young family, what other families can I get around? And we can help connect you with that. Right. What are there Bible studies where there's other women meeting where I can get some time? Or there's some people out hiking. We have a hiking group. Some of you love to hike. So what are you being intentional about? Hey, I want to serve with some others that have the same mission and purpose I do to help people find their way back to God. I need to be in a community group with people who are building me up spiritually, intentionally in your work environment. Who are you putting around you that can mentor you, help you grow in your leadership in those places? So as much as we want to invite people in as an individual, I have to be intentional with who I put around me.
Right. And you have to be willing to step out in faith and in prayer. Remember, we talked a lot about prayer and the importance of prayer, and it matters how you're praying for that team. And then as you're handing off things like, God, I need a mentor, or I need a team around me, or, who are you going to place around me, as you pray about those things to the Lord, you need to have your eyes open and be willing to see him answer those prayers for you.
Absolutely. Hey, and sometimes the people, right, they're very similar to you, or same age, same stage of life. Sometimes it's not. You got to be willing to look. Sometimes there's people from other generations, different walks of life that God can use to speak into your life. So again, be praying, have your eyes open, but we are not called to do life alone. And teamwork just happens and needs to happen and is a blessing in so many areas of life.
Right.
And we want to see it happening at Community Christian, but we want to see that then be a blessing to your family and your workplace and how you're doing those things.
Absolutely. Remember, the goal is for us to help people find their way back to God. We're building up his kingdom. Hopefully that this has been an encouraging conversation for you.
Just a reminder as we do this, Jesus is the model.
Right.
And going back to that, and Luke 6, Matthew 10, Jesus called his team together, and it was unique, those 12, and even how he paired them off at times. And there were certain groups within the groups that worked well together. You see all that in the Gospels. Jesus understood we would need to learn from his model of teamwork and having people around us and passing on the things that we've learned in life to others so they could carry it forward.
Yep. And they did it because we're here 2,000 years later.
Yep, absolutely. God bless you.
See you next week.